Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this webinar. Good evening to everyone in Belgium. Good morning to the people here in the USA, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Rafael Pauwels. I'm the head of the Office of Founders Investment and Trade in Los Angeles. We have 6 of these offices in the USA. We have New York as well. We have Chicago, Atlanta, Houston, San Francisco, and LA. Now, one of our 2 main activities is to help companies from Flanders in their exports to the USA. And today's webinar is part of that effort, of course. The other one is to help US companies if they want to set up and create jobs in Flanders. But that is another story for another time with another audience. Now, with that short introduction, I will leave the floor to the experts in design, interior, architecture, furniture, and so on. And the first one of them being Ms. Barbara Bruneel, the trade director in our Los Angeles office. Barbara, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Raf. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Barbara. I'm the Deputy Trade at the FIT LA office. Thank you for joining our webinar. It's really great having such a diverse group of companies here today. One of the focus sectors of our office is design and lifestyle. So we're very thrilled to host this webinar and welcome our speakers, Katrien Van der Schueren, Jules. With this webinar, you're going to get a practical view on some interior design trends and opportunities in high-end residential, hospitality, and office design. We have a stellar group of people together today, so I'd like to start reading out their achievements in very short bios. After their 15-minute presentations, we're going to open up the conversation with a Q&A. I'd like to thank everyone for all the questions you submitted beforehand. We'll try to cover as many questions as possible within the 10-minute frame we have. We also welcome questions throughout the session via the chat box. Just keep in mind, what we can't do is answer product-specific questions. Just to give an example, who are the largest manufacturers of design switches and sockets? For these very specific questions, we'd ask you to email us afterwards to Los Angeles at FIT Agency, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. It's just our speakers won't be able to, and we can look that up for you. And if we can't answer your question, we can always refer to our contacts in our network that can assist you. Before we begin, let me go through a few do's and don'ts. Please mute your microphone, switch off your camera. You can post all your questions in the chat. After the speakers have presented, we will go over your questions during our Q&A.
Yeah.
A copy of the presentation will be sent to you a couple of days after this webinar. And one more thing, we are recording this webinar, so you're welcome to view it at a later date via the link we'll send you afterwards. And perhaps one thing to conclude, please do not browse through the slides while the webinar is going. So let me get started by introducing our first speaker, Katrien Van der Schueren. She's the owner of Voila Creative Studio. Katrien's studio designs and creates furniture and art for the commercial and residential market. Projects range from art projects for hotels to furniture and art for retail spaces, art for restaurants and private membership clubs, such as Soho House, to sets for companies such as YouTube, and residential clients include the Kardashians and Sir Elton John. Katrien will talk about some trends in the retail and hospitality interior sector, work during COVID-19, how to market your brand, and from her 18 years working in the US. Katrien, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Barbara. Welcome everybody. It's 8 a.m. in Los Angeles. I just wanted to add a couple of things to the introduction, which will clarify a little bit where I come from. So I know most of you probably in the audience have a line of some sort. So I want to make clear that in my company, we only do custom. So I don't have a line. What we do is work directly with the architects and the designers or ownership of projects. And then we come up with a concept based upon their mood boards, or they come up with the concept and the design, and we are just fabricating. And that goes as well for custom furniture as for custom art. We have a lot to cover, and I have gotten exactly 15 minutes, so I'll do my best and I'll time myself a little bit, but there will be more time after the presentation. If you have any specific question after, I'm happy to talk to you. I'm going to take control over the presentation and hope it goes. Okay, so that's my company. Trends in hospitality and retail design. Very vast. The trend number one, I think, it's all about personalized experiences. In America, you know, I don't have to get out of my bedroom to order myself a meal. I can even, I'm sure, order a wedding dress online. And so more and more, especially with the pandemic, and especially increased with the pandemic, if I'm gonna shop, it has to be an experience. And so brands already before the pandemic started, retail brands were struggling with that. They were struggling with the online sales, but they were especially also realizing that the customer of today wants a really personalized and customized approach. And that goes from technology to, you know, how their shopping experience is. A good example of that is, this is a retail store of a high-end brand. It's Carolina Herrera, and it's their flagship store in New York. In the past, a couple of years ago, you would see that their interior was chic but neutral, and they were mainly focused on the clothes that they had in the store. And they switched that entirely to approach the customer of today, which is basically that you walk in and you walk into what feels as the house of the home. So in furniture, that translates to this silk that is used on the chairs. You know, in the past, we would never use a thin silk like that in commercial projects, but it gives that home feeling. Or it goes to it's very thick mohair that they used, and they do hand stitching. Hand stitching would normally be also something that wouldn't be used in commercial projects. So it's really to give that idea. You come in and you're in the house of the brand, and this is what the brand stands for, and you can feel and breathe the brand through, among others, the furniture. And from the moment you enter the store, we have thought of you and we have personalized that experience for you to make it go as efficient as possible, but also to your specific profile. So what do I mean with that? So for example, to chair, you will tell me that that's an antique chair that has been copied, and that's correct, but it's really every single piece of furniture in this store has been designed with the shopper in mind, so personalized to the shopper. In this case, this specific chair was made for the man who goes with his wife and his daughter, and whilst the wife and the daughter or quarreling about the dresses in the dressing room, he would normally have walked out and then come back to foot the bill. But now he likes a little bit of harder surface of a chair, so the designer has thought of, you know, to kind of customize furniture specifically to his needs. This antique chair is a little wider, a little deeper, the height got adjusted, etc., specifically for him. So that there can be this, you know, this connection, and that this man feels at home. Let's see. Okay. Typically, what you saw before the pandemic already hit, and what will be way more also, is online brands. So online brands, even if they know their customer really well, they're also wanting to go to brick and mortar, but not to kind of sell, like this client of ours, Alo, who has several locations all over the United States. It's more for their customer to be able to come in, to feel and breathe the brand, and to also taste the brand, because in some of their new initiatives, they're even also opening a restaurant. But it's basically the brand is expressing themselves in a personalized way to that customer. And you see that in everything, you know, like, I mean, on the right-hand side, that's co-working spaces, but it could be a hotel lobby. On the left-hand side, that is a doctor's office, you know, it's e-health offices, where you see everything has become way more modular, so it's adaptable to the customer depending on the intent, and the customer can do whatever they feel they need to do, whether that's working or mingling or drinking their coffee, etc. Of course, in the hotel industry, that means that you can, people just don't want to go anymore to a Hilton, for example, and that Hilton is standard all over, connected to anywhere. They want to have as personalized a choice, so you could basically also say, okay, I'm going to do every room different. That's what happened in this Swiss hotel, where every room has different furniture, has different beds, etc., which of course has a big implication in the furniture. So I saw a question somewhere about somebody who asked, what's the need for to specify furniture from abroad? Well, this is a good example in that if you see these rooms, so I worked with the American designer, and we were basically the project manager kind of on the project. Part of it is sourced in, you know, some frames are sourced in China, some things are made locally in Los Angeles, some things are made in Belgium. It doesn't really matter as long as, you know, the taste can be done within the budget, which is a challenge if you want to make every room a different vibe. Last, in that personalization, what I saw the last couple of years, and I also think there will come more of that in the high-end resorts like the Four Seasons, etc. You can like kind of rent your villa, and that villa is yours, and you know you can be safe there, Corona or not Corona. But recently you can also buy that villa, and when you buy the villa, you can personalize the design of the villa so you feel like you're at your own home, but you can enjoy the amenities of the hotel. You can decorate the home within your taste spectrum, but it still fits the aesthetic of the brand. Number two is, you know, like there was Airbnb and stuff that already and you know, gave local experiences to travelers, and so travelers really want to have that specific you know, connection with the authenticity and the local you know, local experience. They don't want everything to look the same, or they don't want to not be connected with local. So obviously hotels, for that, they are now creating specific excursions and stuff, but in design and art, it can go as far as on the left, it's you know, working with artisans, local artisans that kind of bring in the flavor of the country and the flavor of the region. Or it goes to the right, this is Palm Springs, but just using art like vintage photos, etc., and beefing up the cushions a little bit and stuff to make it really that Palm Springs vibe. It doesn't have to be that literal. This is a project that we did in Hawaii, where you see, you know, what is important in this project in Hawaii is that the designer used natural fibers and that whole natural look, and, you know, like woods and earth, etc. And the way you have a connection with the region is by the art. So what we did is we looked at the kappa patterns that are typical Hawaii, and then we made these abstract wall sculptures where basically by combining negative and positive, it refers in a very subtle way to the Hawaiian culture. And that can go as simple as when it's more a contemporary kind of design to like using materials like here in a contemporary sculpture that is, refers to Mexican artisanry because it's concrete. And then here, for example, that is also in a very high-end resort in Mexico. You would say that in general, the FFE is kind of standard. It could be everywhere. Of course, the building itself that is designed as such, connects you with the ocean and the beach, but that still could be anywhere. It is really like the art, like the sculpture in the back that kind of brings in that connection with the location by itself and with the traditions and the Mexican traditions and with the nature, etc. And that creates the Instagrammable moments. I think so in retail and hospitality, more and more everything that we do or we are asked to do also is with Instagrammable moments in mind, because basically you want to create that physical experience for the client, and you have to create that physical and authentic experience for the client, but at the same time that client needs to post that on Instagram and on social media and stuff, so that when I'm in my bed, like kind of looking at my next trip, I see, I get inspired and enticed by what is going on there, and I book that trip for that reason. The last one, very important, is go green. So obviously it's of no mystery that, for general well-being, the connection with nature and stuff is important, and that can be done by the architecture. You bring the indoor-outer experience, or it can be done, happens more and more by bringing green inside the lobbies of hotels, or when you're in a city. I want to point out again that there is, like this multifunctional kind of setup there, which is very fluid and can be changed. It can also be done like on the left hand with a sculpture that kind of guides your eye outdoor, or even in an urban setting where you just by the choice of the fabric and these golden trees, you bring some kind of nature in. But of course, it's also very important to work on sustainability, and that's as well for the vendor as for the client itself. Like when they interview now, most travelers, 70% of the travelers say sustainability is very important, and that's of course with plastic use and stuff, but also with the type of materials that are used in the product that is presented. So we, for example, work a lot in the art now with concrete and plaster and stuff, because that's very sustainable. But it goes way further than that. It's also, there is something like an ESG score, which is basically also your social impact and how you, how inclusive are you, where do you stand on social issues, what's your company's culture, and how inclusive is that. And that will be more and more important in the future for people as us who fabricate or have a line, as well as for the end customer who, will evaluate the brand actually on that ESG score. Yeah, and then that should have been my first slide. It's technology. I don't have anything to do with technology, unfortunately. I wish I would. If there's anything out there in the audience who is doing anything at all that has to do with automation or touchless smart solutions, all these industries, that's actually the biggest and most important trend there is. And I think that's where there is the most money to be made, if you have any interest at all in that. I'm just including this slide. This is for a museum. It's a children's museum, but it's quite telling. It's like we made, one of the exhibitions was these phones. And so these kids today, anno 2021, 5 and 6 and stuff, they don't know what these phones are. They're like, why did the phone have a wire and how do I even dial something? And so it will be the big thing. Any brand will be to kind of keep up to date, which also fits in the whole idea of going green and the whole distance idea and, having personalization and stuff. But how to keep up to date with as much of the current technology that there is and have it seamlessly integrated. Here I have a couple of slides. I think I'm already over time, so I'll do a very rough version of it, and then I have a lot of ideas that we can discuss afterwards. Is this a good time to come to the United States? Well, it's probably no surprise to anybody that I have to tell you that hospitality and retail has suffered tremendously from the pandemic, and it won't be back there like right away in 2021. Like even on Thanksgiving Day this year, the occupancy in the hotel industry was down 50%. Now that might be logic because there's lots of hotels that are closed and stuff, but still a lot of Americans, even if there is a pandemic and the ICU beds in the hospitals are filled up, they still travel and they go to hotels. So the fact that it's at 50%, occupancy is very telling, and it also means that 2021 will not necessarily be the easiest year. Of course, there's opportunities. There's people who take advantage to open stores because you can sign good leases and stuff. There's other industries that are coming in, like I'm just saying, everybody has a pet now, and so there will be more pet grooming, retail spaces, etc. But it will take its time, and at this moment in time, the market is kind of down, and so it will have to grow quite considerably before it's back to before March 2020. So how are you as a Belgian entrepreneur gonna contact this client too? Because what happens is, if these would be typically for architecture offices and design offices and stuff, but in the past there were regular ways to contact them through vendor meetings or through events and stuff. That doesn't exist anymore. Also, probably that architect has less work now, had to furlough people, is more into residential, etc. And probably they don't want an extra headache thinking, oh, I'm going to take this risk on this new vendor. They probably are now especially working with vendors that they already know and that they want to support through the pandemic. So I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult to make a market entrance in that way. Also, the question is, can you deliver? Have you thought, and that's a very important point, about what does it mean to import these days? Will my container be held? Will I pay import taxes? And on the longer future hand, will the US dollar crash? And, will that, impact, the pricing of my product? Should I go local now and have a local warehouse? Should I do local production if I want to test that market or not? That's all things to think about. Because in the end, if you go to the United States, it's a very smart, thinking. It's a very big market. It's the biggest consumer market still, right? China is gradually coming up to speed, but Americans are known also to have a very low household saving rate. I think before pandemic, that was around 7%, which is high. But if you come as a Belgian, this is the one advice after 18 years here that I need to give you is like, I know Belgians often look down on Americans, and I can understand why. I still feel that I'm a special American. I have double nationality and I don't relate with most Americans, but there is a big cultural difference, and that cultural difference is significant, and as this here shows, risk avoidance wise, the Belgians are entirely different. So what this here shows, is they will accept you. I mean, the first graph, they will accept you, however way, it can, they're open to new products. But on the right-hand side, I don't know if you see that little arrow, that's one, the long-term orientation, Americans will be Americans. And what I've learned from them is that they want ice cream and they want it now, and you need to deliver it now. And if you don't deliver it now, well, they have somebody else. I mean, Belgium is not unique enough, or I'm not unique enough, they will not adjust to you. you have to adjust to them because tomorrow there is 7 other companies in line. And I think that is especially now with the whole pandemic thing. So I would say over-deliver, be reliable, think full service, go further than just selling your chair, but also think about how can I solve your problem, even if that's way outside of, you know, whatever you're supposed to do, and goes way further than whatever you would do for example, a Belgian client. I think the whole idea of personalization and customer service to the extreme exists in the United States in this market too. And then because you're Belgium and you're risk averse and an American isn't, I would definitely advise you to hedge your risk. Thank you. That's what I have for now.
Thank you very much, Katrien, for all your insights. You covered so many topics today. Let's go to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Julie Claes, owner of Studio STRAF. The name of this Belgian architectural firm speaks volumes about their talent. STRAF means impressive in some Dutch dialects. And Studio STRAF is definitely impressive. You'll notice when you see pictures of their beautiful projects. STRAF is an architecture and interior design studio specialized in high-end residential, hotel, office, and furniture design. The company was founded in 2014 by architect Julie Claes, who lived in the US a couple of years. In just 6 years, Studio STRAF has grown enormously. They've opened a location in New York City, in addition to their hometown Antwerp. They offer services in architecture, interior and furniture design, as well as landscape design. Studio STRAF merges architecture with a strong geometric sensibility using warm, natural, and traditional materials. Today, Julie will address some current opportunities and trends in the high-end residential market. She will talk about the impact of COVID-19 on work, and she will also elaborate on digital opportunities and community presence. Julie, the floor is all yours.
I'm going to take over. I'm sure, yes. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. Let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Julie, founder of STRAF, and I'd like to start introducing us, explaining our logo. So this is our logo. It will tell you a bit more about our philosophy and goal. It represents the monad. It's an ancient symbol which refers to the totality of all things, and it signifies the need to act, to make a change, and to accumulate energy in order to give it back to the world. Let's go one further. So this is STRAF. I like to present the structure of STRAF. It has 3 business. STRAF itself is the architectural and interior services that we actually provide worldwide. Atelier STRAF is the furniture line created with our artisans and craftsmen that we work with. And Sense STRAF is the newborn baby since 1 month actually only, where we will develop our own lifestyle brand, where we will take care of the senses in people's home. So the next slide. I'm going to briefly get you acquainted with a couple of our projects. The first one is the Water Pavilion. It's an atelier, a quiet space for creativity and relaxation with a swimming pool. And here we've opted for an ecological design with natural materials, delicate finishes, timeless, since it is also comfortable to a 2-bedroom family house if needed in the future. Below there, you can see a silent retreat in the wine country of Oregon. It's a boutique hotel with 5 quiet rooms. It is a destination to calm the mind and reflect or shelter your soul. The next slide has 2 more. The first one is House on the Hill. It's a newly built family house that we're actually currently still building. And it's integrated in its surroundings using local soil in the facades and local wood. And then the one below is a sanctuary in the wood. It's actually also a silent retreat, but in a different way. This one is a very introverted one, while the other one is really based on balance, introversion and extroversion. The next slide shows a bit of how we go further from the architecture holistically in the interior. Give me 1 second. We always try to create a strong connection between both of them, interior and its surroundings, bringing the atmosphere as well of the landscape inside. For example, in the first one, you see the seaside penthouse. There we brought the feeling of the soft sand inside, in the walls, in the doors, in the canvases of the linens of the closets. It breeds freshness, we think, and calm and serenity, what people need nowadays. In the left bottom, you can see the heritage building that we reconverted into a family home. Also, again, reapplying the use of all traditional mineral materials and techniques. So we always try to be very true to the building itself if we do a reconversion. We stand for making home for people who will live in it, and we capture the people's personality, needs, and way of living. It's a long co-creation process and also psychological path with the people that mostly up till now always became friends afterwards. It's always a co-creation. In this one, you see an English townhouse. It's in the right corner on top. It's a delicate space for a very highly sensitive and a very well-organized, structured businessman with a deep appreciation for delicate beauty. And then the one below, the one on top left actually, is a project in St. Petersburg. Here we converted a human soul into a space. The client was a PhD in literature, and we converted the loft into a vivid library where she could live in her books. And then this very short and briefly is the furniture line Morphe that we launched, and that we're also probably from next month on gonna launch in the US through an exclusive distributorship in 2 states. One is on the East Coast and the other one is on the West Coast. For that, I might actually briefly elaborate, like these exclusive distributorships. We found them because they're very trusted parties. I don't think, having lived in the US, I would do it with any kind of person, because business is very different in the US than here. So you need to really know these people, trust these people, build a relationship for a little bit longer time. Let me go to the next one. So then I'm gonna briefly talk about the US residential design and architecture market. Now in COVID times, people tend to move out of the cities, relocate to green areas in the suburbs. There's a lot of houses being bought in the suburbs. And there is also, which we notice, the requests we're getting, there's a big tendency of buying second homes in areas with a better climate, which creates new opportunities in the residential market for everyone, I guess. Like Katrien already said, the USA is a very big market, but it's very different locally. States tend to have different likes, behaviors. The light is very different. Climate differs in the east, north, south, and west. Then I would like to talk about the COVID impact on the residential market and market opportunities. In general, home becomes, of course, much more important. We've noticed it very deeply. We get more requests in contrast to other industries. Our high-end residential market segment has been benefiting from COVID. There is many times spent at the home and therefore more focus on the design development of it as well. And we do see a rise in these requests, and home is merging with work and family as well due to the remote work standards. So it has a lot of opportunity. So home becomes a sanctuary for nurturing yourself. It's the first trend that we recognize. Home is the place now where we multitask in many ways and spend about 80% of our time together. In pandemic times, anxiety is something that is installed in many of us. Some don't suffer from this, but a lot of people have anxieties. And people are looking for safety and security in their homes. The home becomes the shelter for the soul, a place to nurture your being and protect also your family. So we're going back to these very, very old meanings of what a home should be. Coming from a decade of more white and blue tones, people are now searching for warmth, and earthy tones are very much often associated with natural materials like linens, natural stones, solid woods, mineral paint, and plasters. It's really a trend. Tactility starts to play a huge role in this as well. The second trend that we recognize is sustainability and awareness. And I believe most of these trends will be addressed actually worldwide. Sustainability and awareness, when it comes to consciousness of the ecological footprint and circular economies, Europe has always been ahead of the US. And sustainability is an ongoing, growing trend amongst all of us worldwide. Sustainable materials are the ones that age more beautiful. People are therefore moving away from the artificial materials. We never use artificial materials, we only go for natural. People in general during COVID times also tend to go more out in nature and have a bigger need to be surrounded by nature. And it is the architect's task, we believe, to balance the inside and out more than ever during these times. So building materials are often also more locally sourced and produced. The third trend that we see is that architecture of the senses. People need a home and not a house. So architecture is not only for the eyes, but it needs to reassure a whole sensory experience and stimulate all the senses. We as architects really need to capture the psychological behavior and habits and needs of our clients in order to give the right architectural design and give them the most out of our talent that can help them have a better quality of life. We try to create universal houses, meaning that where all family members can have their own spiritual path in connection with and supported by their surroundings. We do this often by using the very natural tones from natural tones. Why do people say natural tones? It's brown, it's green, and it's beige. It's everything what you can find in nature. Then sorry, need to go to the next one. The next one is, the trend is essence of minimalism. So the trend to associate minimalism with cold, impersonal, and sleek architecture, it's gone. While with the use of warm natural materials, we try to achieve timeless, universal atmospheres that survive generations to come. I think that's also our task, like not to think now, but in something that can surpass even our children and grandchildren. The trend is also not to follow the trend. That's basically what it is. It cannot become fashion, what is created, because it has its source in nature and it has always been there in essence. So people are being faced at this moment in COVID times with their own reality more than ever. And this forces people to go to their core. So what we also see, and in the architecture and interior, is that well thought through details make the design feel less cluttered, and clutter during these times is not something which helps a human being to become a better being. So proportions, another thing that we also see is proportions and dimensions are again more and more inspired by nature. It's an old thing that architects did, but architects study and apply the natural laws again, like the golden rule and the sacred geometry, and it gets more and more back applied. In Europe, people like to go to simplicity in technology. So what we often get is that we don't want to have the light switches on my phone. I don't want to switch off my lights through my phone. They just want to go back to normal. Another trend is that there needs to be a story behind things. There is a trend happening worldwide that is called circular economy. And that means like give a second life to waste disposal or old buildings, or when you dig out ground, you make your walls out of it again. It's conscious building and conscious living. And people more and more have an urge for a story behind it. Even when you buy it, like a small product, when it's aged, when it has a story, or when it has an artisanal feel, people love it. And it starts always from the values from the past. So you can notice when objects have that old soul and when there is history behind it. So people start to really appreciate history, old techniques, old treatments again, old wisdoms, forgotten wisdoms. There's a love for artifacts and cultures, cultures that actually learn each other cross-fertilization wise, many wisdoms from lost wisdoms. And another thing, the story behind things is that we know that we don't need to produce new materials. There's enough material and leftovers and waste. It's a task to be creative with them and build a new layer on top of it in this time. The last thing that I want to talk about, it's a takeaway, and it's a very positive side, since there are definitely COVID business opportunities. And this is definitely something everyone knows very well now, these screens during COVID. It's LinkedIn, Facebook, your website, and Instagram. And all companies have or had to face the digital transformation, or it could have been done in the past by good leadership or a CTO, or now forced by COVID. It mainly is depending on how fast you can install trust, opposed to distrust in your own team, in people, in basically in everything. And it became a necessity, and it's a huge opportunity to connect, to build your online showroom, to tell your story, to communicate, to create a personal bond with your end clients, with your customers, and diminish the distance between you and your end user. It also creates the opportunity to build community around yourself. If you let yourself see and you show who you really are, there is trust, and you gain trust even from afar. And there are many channels available nowadays to spread brand values and unique propositions in the market. And as a matter of fact, Instagram generates most of our leads these days and creates new international collaborations. Weekly we get international requests for collaborations due to appreciation of mutual appreciation of work. From a physical office or a local practice beforehand, all of a sudden the whole world can now become your client, and there's really no limit to this. Also, there are many ways to collaborate with others. We are constantly collaborating with other architects, designers, or artisans. I believe it's the new sustainable business model. So that's a bit what I wanted to add and give in this webinar. Thank you very much. And if you have questions, we'll be here.
Thank you very much, Julie, for your presentation and for your very relevant insights today. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce you to Jorge Colón, Director of Interior Architecture and Design at Co-Architects. Co-Architects is nationally recognized for architectural planning, programming, and design in the higher education, science and technology, civic and healthcare sectors, and works with leading institutions from coast to coast. Jorge Colón brings over 20 years of design and management experience to his role as Director of Interior Architecture and Design. His work spans a broad range of project types, including academic, commercial, and residential building projects, as well as the adaptive reuse and renovation of interior spaces. At Co-Architects, Jorge is responsible for guiding design processes that result in responsive and fully integrated interior environments. Jorge will give us a practical look at trends in workplace design, new ways of working after a pandemic, how work culture will change, and how spaces will be used. Jorge, the floor is all yours.
Great, thank you. And in the spirit of time, I promise to speak very quickly. I'll try to cover my material in maybe 10 minutes. Sure. So I'll skip through some of the firm background. I would like to add to that description. Thank you, Barbara. Is that our clients are mission-driven clients, and they're interested in the in design solutions that further that mission, that message, that mission, that support the functions associated with that. And so to quickly just kind of run through a few of the kinds of spaces that we do and the kind of clients we work with. Many of our clients are higher education institutions, universities, colleges. We work with a lot of laboratories and research institutions, both private and many associated with those universities. A good portion of our practice is in healthcare, so spaces that are meant to heal. And then, of course, the workplace, the office functions, the administrative spaces associated with that work. So we thought it'd be helpful to identify 4 trends that'll probably lean towards sort of the business side. Many of the design elements that were described earlier resonate with our work, and so it was very nice to hear them. Would also add that looking ahead to a post-COVID work environment and post-COVID design, that many of the trends that we are identifying are less changes as much as they are advancement or acceleration in trends that were already in place. So the first one is that our clients are looking at their headquarters, their office spaces, their workspaces, and they're trying to bring a greater specificity to the role. They're asking, why have a space to begin with? Why have an office space? Many of our teams have been working remotely. Why bother? And so for looking ahead, we anticipate that many of our clients will place a greater emphasis on the front of house showroom character of their business, whether it be a research institution or an office space, that it will be a place where you meet the client. Other organizations, we anticipate will bring a greater focus to bringing culture and building team to their spaces. That means a branding, training, the collaboration and the collegiality that we miss from working remotely. And we think many of our clients will look at their spaces and bring a greater focus to a space where they actually do the work in a way that they can't do at home. Okay. We anticipate that the real estate needs of our clients are going to be fluid. And what that means that historically, you'd have a list of people and a list of square footage, and then you would build out the space. And as we know now and appreciate more in a COVID setting and moving beyond, that the configurations, the number of people working in any given day will change daily, and that the spaces that support that change, that dynamism, will also have to be functional. So we're looking at design solutions, we're looking at products, ideas, technologies that will allow that change to happen more quickly and on a daily level. We're also looking ahead, and we're understanding that more of the work performed by our clients will happen remotely. That pre-COVID, historically, there are 2 ways of either work from an office, you work from home, or you worked on the road. And we can recall and we think of traveling on business, traveling out of the office, working out of hotels, hotel lobbies, that sort of thing. And that will continue, certainly. But that from our end, we're starting to see other kinds of spaces emerge as kind of somewhere else. And we're starting to see other kinds of spaces that are supporting that work, those missions. We're starting to see a decentralizing of our clients' office space and facilities into more regional or satellite offices. We're seeing co-working spaces where space is rented on a monthly basis or on a weekly basis. And then we're also seeing smaller hubs and sort of on-demand spaces. That is, someone decides on any given day that I'm not going to go into the office, but I'm also not going to work from home. So what are those design solutions that allow that work to happen in these other kinds of spaces? And finally, trend 4 is that clients will demand, will anticipate, will expect something that feels more like a retail-like delivery, retail-like environment. Over the last 9 months, over the last year, but one could argue over the last year, last 2 years, that we've been seeing a shift from something that was maybe more transactional, where manufacturers work directly with design firms and perhaps dealers, to a greater online presence. So the ability for our clients, for our consultants, for designers to have easy access to information, for us to be able to deliver those products fast, and of course the brand experience, that work is done with a smile, and that work is done in a way that messages the story of an organization, the story of a product, or that connects with the client in a meaningful way, that we expect all that to happen very quickly and in a much more retail-like setting. You know, we're starting to see a lot of U.S. firms, a lot of U.S. manufacturers migrate much of their work online in a way that feels very much like shopping for holiday gifts. So it's certainly a source of information for us in the design community, and we still have showrooms. We still have that interaction with that traditional interaction with our manufacturer partners, but we're seeing our clients more and more access this information directly, and we're seeing our manufacturing partners work more closely with our clients, with their facilities folks, and with their HR groups. So those are our 4 trends, and I'm gonna stop right there.
Okay, thank you.
8 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jorge. That leaves us some time for a short Q&A. Perhaps let me get started with a few questions that were submitted beforehand. First question we got is, what are some threats of doing business in the US? For instance, liability risks, and how to prevent them. Perhaps, Katrien, could you start answering this question?
Yeah, I think different from in Belgium. There's lots of differences, and I think you guys are going to do a specific seminar on it. But in the United States, basically, it works with the whole culture. You are responsible for anything and everything you do, but the liability part and the litigation part, that's actually the big difference. So if you have a company, you always have litigation risks, you know, employer, vendor-wise or whatever, but like for your product too, you have litigation risks. And that can be very expensive. I mean, there is valid litigation, which is that you screwed up with something or you sue somebody for a valid reason. Personally, I think one of the things that for a Belgian is hard to imagine is that there is frivolous litigation. And, you know, like our current president is very good at that. And so it doesn't mean that these people go into the frivolous lawsuits thinking that they will gain anything. But if you're a company, that can become a huge expense because, you know, you have to defend yourself. And contrary to in Belgium, it's not like this, that the one who loses the lawsuit needs to pay the litigation fees. So that, you know, like, so I think my advice would be to really, really be well surrounded when you do business in the US and try to kind of make sure that your ass is covered in a certain way with people who know exactly what they're doing.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question that came up is the American market is very specification driven. It's good to be connected with the architecture and interior design firms. What is the key to getting products specified by architects, and what type of products are specified that need to be imported from abroad? Jorge, could you start answering?
Sure. You know, in terms of getting specified, I think, you know, in our world, you know, we're working so quickly just to maintain that presence, to have local representation where there's a connect with our design teams, just so that, you know, when one of us, I mean, it's very anecdotal, but when one of us gets a call and a client asks, you know, I need an acoustical solution, I have an existing space, but I can't hear myself think, that I can turn to this company and I can direct them to their website, or I can direct them to a contact person. I think it's that immediacy, knowing that you have a resource there available quickly, and they can deliver the information quickly.
And what are you looking for exactly? How can they prepare themselves? Do they need to have their technical sheets ready, technical drawings, press releases? What are you looking for? What has to be on the website?
Absolutely. It's all of the above. Similar to our clients, we too are bombarded with imagery. We're bombarded with Instagram and Pinterest, and there's just so much information. So we too look as much to the personal relationship and the personal connection, and certainly that individual, that local presence has those digital materials that can be distributed quickly, and that's both very strong visuals that inspire, but then also the technical information for our institutional clients who are looking for long-term performance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another question that came in, is e-commerce an option for foreign exporters that want to reach the market? And what's the importance of e-commerce in the market? Someone can answer that question about e-commerce?
We, for example, opt for not doing the e-commerce actually and finding a good local distributor that can take on the US side of selling. I think it's very difficult if you're not present yourself in the US to take on the full chain. It's good to have very good contacts, like Jorge also said. It's all about building relationships, and they're not built in one day. Prepare your lookbook, prepare your sales prices in dollars very well. Make sure you do a bigger markup than here in the US. Take into account that commissions for designers are bigger than in Europe. So you have to actually, when you set your prices, you have to first start thinking if Europe prices are going to be the same as the dollar prices, or are you going to treat both continents differently because you need a bigger markup in the US. Have your sales conditions ready. Make sure you talk to a lawyer that revises everything. And yeah, shipping, clearance, distributorship, there is a lot to take into account before you start selling. And as an architect, when coming back on the question from the specifications, and basically we as architects, you have your favorite parties you work with. It's building trust. It's building, how do you get as a product dealer into their vision, because you want to get into their vision. I think we're all on Instagram. That's basically where you have to put your products out. Proactively, you can do promotions on Instagram. That's how we pick you up. There's a lot of dealers that also proactively send their stuff to us. We nowadays have online libraries, digital libraries, basically. We don't do we actually, sorry to say, but we throw away the catalogs. We have everything digital, and we love it that people proactively send them to us with the new prices in the beginning of the year, because then it's always updated every year. And yeah, it's these kind of things. It's also a big difference for us in the US and in Europe is, it was a good learning curve. It's the RFIs that we have to undersign as an architect. It's request for information, and basically all the contractors send us requests for information. So if there's anything wrongly specified, we will always be accountable. I think that's a very big difference in the US and in EU. Also, contractors in Europe, they really work as a team with us. In the US, it's each on its own. Although you're friendly and whatever, but whenever there's a problem in Europe, it's very different. In Europe, you talk to each other, and for every problem there's a solution. In US, it's finger pointing immediately. So you're not allowed to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
We like to think that we work in a very collaborative setting, but I would emphasize, and I'm not disagreeing, I'm just but I would emphasize the ongoing maintenance and engagement until installation. That it's not just about putting in the purchase order, but we really seek partners that will remain engaged to either help clarify the questions from general contractors, and or will be there as a second set of eyes in terms of the installation to make sure that it's executed properly. And if that online presence is, for someone breaking into a U.S. market, I might even recommend nurturing a relationship with a local dealer who does have some of those relationships in place. The dealers who we work with curate their own collection of brands and products. And so oftentimes we can rely on their judgment in terms of not only the quality of the product, but also the quality of the delivery and the follow through.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. Perhaps one last question. Do foreign exporters depend exclusively on large distribution companies to place their products in the market? Sometimes selling products to large chains may be a challenge to small but high quality exporters. Also, signing contracts with large companies may be a risk for exporters. Such contracts may have exclusivity clauses that might make exporters too dependent. Can you say something about the exclusivity?
Well, it's a choice. Of course, it's a choice. But if you have good partners, I wouldn't give away the whole of the US because that's a very, very big market, and I would do it strategically, like state by state, and see how they develop in their sales. Like for me, California is a separate market. Miami is a separate market. New York is a separate market. So think wisely and do your homework. Like a very good, I think one of the people who's attending is from Rançon, and what I think is a very interesting story is that before they targeted the market, the son actually drove with a van like 1 year through the whole country to see what's the market like, what are the trends, it's a huge country with with so many differences in each state. Yeah, you have to do your homework, I guess.
Okay, let's conclude this webinar. Katrien, Julie, and Jorge, thank you very much for your interesting presentations and insights. We really appreciate your time and expertise. Also, thank you for all participants taking the time to join us today. I hope it was very relevant and useful. And last but not least, I also want to thank my colleagues in Brussels, Evelyn and Ariane, the work they did behind the screen. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Great meeting you all.
Thank you.
Bye.